Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to our channel, Pakistan Zindabad, the next world superpower. Today, we are diving deep into episode 25, which is all based on a really powerful concept from the book, The Nuclear Umbrella by Mr. Zaheer Ahmad Meer. The idea is called Joint Intelligence Fusion. Now, what is that? Well, it asks a huge question. How in the world do you take 57 different separate intelligence agencies scattered all across the Muslim world and connect them, forge them into one single strategic brain? I mean, it's a concept so ambitious, it aims to completely change the game on a global scale. So let's get into it and break down what this actually means.
This quote from the book really just perfectly captures the entire vision. It's so much more than just, sharing files or sending emails between agencies. It's about creating a living, breathing, collective sensory system. Think about it. Imagine having the eyes to see a threat forming thousands of miles away, long before it ever becomes a crisis. Imagine having the ears to listen in and detect plots and whispers across continents. And most importantly, having a unified strategic mind to take all of that information, make sense of it, and then decide how to act. That is the huge central idea that we're going to explore today.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we're going to dig into that core idea of a unified strategic brain. Then, we'll look at why this is so important, the incredibly high stakes involved in intelligence. After that, we'll diagnose what the author sees as the fundamental problem, what he calls the fragmentation flaw. And finally, we'll lay out the big idea to fix it all, the fusion solution.
So, let's start with that first big piece. What exactly is this unified strategic brain? I want to be really clear here. This isn't just about more meetings or better cooperation. The author is proposing something far more radical. A complete and total re-engineering of how intelligence is gathered, analyzed, and used across dozens of nations. So, at its very heart, joint intelligence fusion is this idea of a single, unified network. Now, the best way to think about this is not like a bunch of separate libraries that occasionally agree to lend each other books. No. Think of it more like one gigantic, shared, cloud-based server, a single intelligence ecosystem where every single member, all 57 of them, can upload what they know and access the collective pool of information instantly, in real time. The goal here is to build a complete picture of the world, a strategic map so detailed and so comprehensive that no single nation, no matter how powerful, could ever hope to see it on its own.
Okay, so that's the what. But the big question is, why? Why does any of this matter? Why go through all the trouble of building something so complex? Well, the author argues that a nation's intelligence capability isn't just some secondary department. It's not a nice to have. It is the absolute key to its survival, its sovereignty, its very existence. And the stakes, as we're about to see, are as high as they get.
This right here really lays it out in black and white. It's the two sides of the same coin. On one hand, when your intelligence is strong, you have this proactive shield. You're not just waiting for bad things to happen and then reacting, you're actually preventing wars before they start. You're stopping attacks before they're launched. You're exposing your enemy's plans and crushing terrorist networks. But look at the contrast, the other side. When intelligence is weak, the consequences are absolutely catastrophic. We're talking about entire states collapsing. We're talking about foreign powers infiltrating your government and society. It means devastating attacks can happen with absolutely no warning. The author really frames intelligence as the immune system of a nation. When it's strong, it fights off disease. When it's weak, the whole body is vulnerable to collapse.
And to make sure this isn't just abstract theory, the author points to these specific, real-world events as examples of intelligence failure. 9/11 is, of course, the classic textbook case of dots not being connected. The information was out there, but it was in separate silos. The collapse of Syria and the infiltration of Iraq and Yemen are cited as examples where external forces were able to exploit internal divisions and weaknesses, something that strong, unified intelligence could have potentially seen and countered. Then you have events in Kashmir and surprise attacks on Gaza, which are presented as direct, painful evidence of what happens when you have critical blind spots. Each one of these examples is used to build a powerful case that something needs to change, and urgently. So, if the stakes are literally life and death, what is the core problem holding everyone back? This brings us to the author's central diagnosis of the issue. He calls it the fragmentation flaw. The argument is pretty compelling. You can have all the resources, all the people, all the strategic geography in the world, but it's all undermined by one single critical missing piece in the puzzle.
And it all comes down to this one number, 57. That's not just 57 nations. That is 57 separate, independent, uncoordinated intelligence agencies. Each one is its own little kingdom, its own information silo. They have their own priorities, their own sources, their own secrets. In effect, they are 57 islands of information floating in a vast, dark ocean. According to the author, this separation, this lack of connection, is the single greatest strategic vulnerability that exists.
And this fragmentation isn't just a theoretical problem. It has very real, very damaging consequences. When you have no shared database, a critical piece of information can get stuck behind a border, completely useless to the one agency that actually needs it. This creates huge gaps in understanding. It leads to overlapping operations where maybe 3 or 4 different agencies are all wasting resources chasing the exact same lead without knowing it. And maybe even worse, it can lead to completely contradictory assessments of the same threat, causing confusion and paralysis. And what's the end result of all of this? Massive, dangerous blind spots that leave the entire collective wide open and vulnerable to surprise.
All right, so after laying out the problem so clearly, this fragmentation flaw, the author doesn't just stop there. He proposes a detailed, ambitious blueprint to actually fix it. This is what he calls the fusion solution, and it's designed as a direct answer to the separation, the silos, and the blind spots that we've just been talking about. The blueprint is broken down into 4 key components. First, you build the unified network. This is the technical backbone, the infrastructure, the digital highways that connect all 57 agencies. Second, at the heart of that network, you create a central fusion hub. This is the strategic brain we talked about, the place where all the data from all the different sources flows, gets analyzed, and turned into actionable intelligence. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, is real-time data flow. The goal is to eliminate delays completely. Information that's a week old is history. Information that's a second old is intelligence. And all of this leads to the 4th and final step, joint action. Because the whole point isn't just to know things together, the ultimate goal is to be able to act on that knowledge together, in a coordinated and effective way.
And when you boil it all down, this is what it's all for. The single, ultimate objective of this massive undertaking is to make the collective impossible to surprise. It's a fundamentally defensive idea. It's about eliminating blind spots. It's about connecting the dots before a crisis happens, not after. It's about achieving a state of total strategic awareness, where nothing major can happen on the global stage without it being seen, understood, and prepared for. And so, that leaves us with this final, massive question to think about. The proposal we've just walked through is absolutely enormous. I mean, the level of trust and integration required is completely unprecedented in history. So what are the real implications? Thinking about the immense power, the incredible challenges, and the global shifts that a system like this could trigger, it really puts the author's vision into perspective. What would the world actually look like if this network truly existed and worked exactly as designed? That's the big question to ponder.
All right, today we are diving deep into something truly massive. We're looking at an incredibly ambitious proposal laid out in Zaheer Ahmad Meer's book, The Nuclear Umbrella. Now, what we're talking about here is a blueprint for one of the largest, most complex intelligence sharing alliances ever conceived. Imagine a single, unified system designed to connect 57 different nations. It's a huge idea, so let's break it down. So let's just start with the core challenge, the central question of it all. How on earth would you even begin to unify the intelligence operations of 57 separate nations? I mean, just think about the sheer complexity for a second. You've got countries with completely different languages, different political systems, wildly different security priorities, not to mention massive gaps in their technological capabilities. How could you possibly get them all on the same page, sharing their most sensitive secrets and operating like one cohesive unit? That is the fundamental problem this blueprint sets out to solve. So, to really wrap our heads around how this would all work, we're going to build this concept from the ground up, piece by piece in 4 sections. First, we'll look at the overall unified blueprint. Then, we're going to zoom right into its core, what's called the central brain. From there, we'll see how a network of experts provides the muscle and the reach, and finally, we'll examine the digital backbone, the tech that would have to hold this entire thing together. Okay, let's start with the big picture. The official name for this entire proposed system is the Muslim Joint Intelligence Fusion Network, or MJFIN for short. And you know, that name itself gives us a massive clue about its main purpose. The key word here isn't just sharing, it's fusing. It's about taking separate pieces of information and melting them together into something new and more powerful.
So what does this actually mean? Well, the key words in this definition are multi-level and integrated. This isn't just some glorified group chat or a database where countries can dump raw intel if they feel like it. No, the blueprint describes a far more sophisticated system. It's got a central command, it's got regional hubs, and it has national specialists, all designed to work in perfect sync. The ultimate goal here? To create a kind of collective security shield, a nuclear umbrella of intelligence for all 57 member states.
So at the absolute heart of this massive web, you have a proposed central command and control structure. It's called the Muslim Intelligence Fusion Center, or the MIFC. The best way to think about this is as the central nervous system for the entire 57-nation operation. It's the one place where all the different threads of information from all over the world would converge to be processed and understood.
So what would this central brain actually be doing all day? Well, the process is broken down into 5 core functions. It starts with collection, basically sucking in all the raw intelligence from all 57 members. But then comes integration, and this is really the secret sauce. The MIFC wouldn't just look at military intelligence in a silo. It would fuse it with cyber threat data, economic intelligence, political analysis, everything, to create one holistic, complete picture of a threat. The third step, analysis, is where it gets really futuristic. The plan is to use advanced AI for predictive threat assessment, to spot dangers before they even materialize. Alerting is the crucial output from all that analysis, sending out clear, actionable warnings to national leaders and all member agencies. And finally, you have coordination. The MIFC would act like the conductor of an orchestra, making sure all the different parts of this massive intelligence machine are working in harmony.
Okay, so a command center this critical, this central, you can't just stick it anywhere, right? The question is, where would you actually build a place like this? Well, the book proposes a very specific location, Islamabad, the capital of Pakistan. And trust me, this choice is anything but random. It's based on a very specific set of strategic calculations outlined in the book. So, why Islamabad? What's the thinking here? The source material lays out 4 main reasons. First, it points to the global reputation of Pakistan's intelligence agency, the ISI. Second, it highlights its high-level counterintelligence capabilities, its ability to defend against other spy agencies. The third point is what's called unmatched multi-theater operational experience. That's a fancy way of saying they have a long and complex history of managing major security challenges on multiple fronts all at the same time. And finally, the book posits that the agency is widely trusted among the other proposed member nations, which would obviously be crucial for making it a viable leader for such a deeply sensitive coalition.
Okay, so we've established the central brain in Islamabad, but an operation on this kind of scale can't be completely centralized. It would collapse under its own weight. So let's move to the next layer of this blueprint and see how it builds out into a distributed network of expertise. This is where different regions and even different individual nations start to play very specific, specialized roles.
The blueprint calls for 5 of these regional hubs, and each one would act as a kind of mini fusion center for its own geographic neighborhood. So you'd have Riyadh covering the Middle East, Cairo handling Africa, Ankara for Central Asia, and Kuala Lumpur for the vast Indo-Pacific region. And as you can see, Islamabad would be pulling double duty here, serving as both the central overarching command and the specific hub for South Asia. These hubs are designed to consolidate all the regional intelligence before feeding it up to the main center, which creates a much more manageable and efficient flow of information.
Now, this is where the concept gets really granular and honestly, really fascinating. The proposal doesn't just assign regions, it assigns specializations. It's about leveraging the unique existing strengths of different nations. It's like putting together a team of superheroes, each with their own power. So, Pakistan would take the lead on counterterrorism and nuclear intelligence. Turkey, famous for its advanced drone program, would handle signals intelligence. That's things like intercepting communications, and of course, drone surveillance. Saudi Arabia would focus on financial intelligence, especially tracking the money that fuels extremist groups. Malaysia would be the lead agency for cyber intelligence. Egypt would spearhead human intelligence, that's spies on the ground, across Africa. And the UAE would bring its expertise in high-tech surveillance and digital monitoring. It's a very deliberate division of labor designed to get the best out of everyone.
And this quote from the source material really just nails the entire philosophy behind this structure. The goal isn't to have 57 nations all trying to do the exact same thing, maybe stepping on each other's toes. Not at all. It's about creating a collaborative ecosystem, an environment where each country contributes its best-in-class skills to the collective, achieving both deep specialization and incredible unity at the very same time.
All right, so we've got the central brain. We have the network of regional and specialized experts. But how do they all talk to each other? How do you connect them securely, instantly, across dozens of countries? Well, that brings us to our final section, the digital backbone. This is the shared technology, the common infrastructure that would have to underpin this entire massive network.
The proposal outlines 5 critical technological pillars that would make this all possible. First, a Muslim intelligence database, the MID, which is basically a giant, shared, classified library of data. Second is that AI predictive model we talked about earlier. Third is a joint watch list system, and this really shows the practical power of the network. Think about it. If just one nation adds a suspected terrorist to the list, all 56 other nations get an alert, instantly. Fourth is the Muslim Intelligence Cloud, the MIC. This would allow for real-time encrypted data sharing, all built on what's called a zero-trust security model, which basically means no one and nothing is trusted by default. Everything has to be verified. And finally, to lock it all down, a joint encryption protocol, a super secure communication standard that the book proposes would be co-developed by Pakistan and Turkey.
So when you put all of that tech together, what's the ultimate point? Well, it all serves three main goals. First, to make the network secure, so nations can share their most sensitive information with total confidence. Second, to make it real-time, so that intelligence is immediately actionable, not old news by the time it gets to the right person. And third, to make it predictive, which is the real game changer, shifting the entire focus from just reacting to threats to actively getting ahead of them and preventing them from happening in the first place. That's the technological vision.
And so that brings us to the end of our breakdown of this remarkable blueprint from the nuclear umbrella. We've seen the whole proposed structure, from that central brain in Islamabad out to the specialized roles of individual nations, all connected by a shared, futuristic digital backbone. It is, without a doubt, a comprehensive and incredibly detailed vision, which really just leaves us with one final, very big question to think about. What would the geopolitical and security implications truly be for the entire world if a single unified intelligence system on this unprecedented scale—
Okay, think about this for a second. What would it actually take to bring together the intelligence agencies of, well, over 1 billion people and turn them into one single unified force? It sounds like something out of a spy thriller, right? But that is the massive question at the heart of Zaheer Ahmad Meer's book, The Nuclear Umbrella. And today, we're going to break down the blueprint he lays out for what would be a complete overhaul of security across the Muslim world.
So this one sentence you see here, that's the whole point. It's the endgame. The author puts this right out there as the ultimate destination. But how? I mean, how on earth do you take this incredibly diverse collection of nations and forge them into one single entity that's strategically aware? Well, that's the journey we're about to go on.
All right, so let's get right to the core of it. What's the problem that this whole massive strategy is even trying to solve? Well, according to the author, it all comes down to one thing: a deep strategic vulnerability. The argument in the book is that for way too long, many Muslim nations have been, well, divided, operating on their own. And that division, he argues, makes them wide open to outside influence and threats. So the solution has to start right here, with a unified intelligence front.
The main idea here is actually pretty simple, but it has huge implications. Think of it like this. Any single nation, no matter how powerful, has blind spots. You just can't see everything from one vantage point. And when you operate all by yourself, those gaps are exactly where your enemies can hit you. So, the solution proposed in the book isn't just about, giving one country some better spy gear. No. It's about networking all of them together, creating a coordinated alliance where everyone shares what they see, basically turning a bunch of separate states into one single strategic mind.
Okay, so a unified strategic mind sounds great in theory, but how would an alliance this ambitious actually work in the real world? The book lays out a really clear architecture for it, built on 4 distinct pillars. You can think of these as the massive load-bearing columns holding the whole thing up. Let's dive into what they are.
First up, Pillar 1, joint surveillance. This is all about getting a complete picture of the battlefield, total awareness. The idea is to pool together the best of the best assets. We're talking shared drone fleets giving you real-time eyes in the sky, satellite networks for that constant stare from orbit, and of course, advanced electronic systems listening in on communications. The real magic, though, is fusing all that data together into one single comprehensive intelligence picture. The goal? To see things that no single nation on its own could ever hope to see.
But, just seeing the threat is only half the battle, right? You have to be able to do something about it. That brings us to Pillar 2. Joint counterterrorism. This is about having the unified muscle to actually act. We're moving beyond just sharing data now. This means having shared goals, like a common list of targets, an integrated command structure to make those lightning-fast decisions, and elite forces that can be deployed across borders in a heartbeat to take out any threat.
All right, so the third pillar flips the script and looks inward. This one is all about defense, basically protecting the alliance from getting compromised from within.
The book gets pretty specific here, calling out the need to neutralize infiltration from other state-level agencies, and also to root out internal threats like extremist sleeper cells. It's all about making sure the system is rock solid from the inside out.
And finally, Pillar 4 takes us to the battlefield of the 21st century, cyberspace. As the author points out, modern wars aren't just fought with bombs and bullets anymore. They're fought with bits and bytes. So this cyber intelligence pillar is imagined as a massive digital shield. Its job is to defend the entire alliance from things like state-sponsored hacking, financial espionage, massive propaganda campaigns, and that never-ending threat of data theft.
So there you have it, the 4 pillars. That's the engine of this proposed alliance. But a great design is one thing. The real question is, how does this machine actually perform when the pressure is on? Well, the book doesn't leave us hanging. It shifts from theory to action, and it runs this entire system through a few crisis scenarios to show us exactly how it's supposed to respond when the stakes are highest. Let's jump into one of the most intense scenarios the book lays out. Just picture this. A massive, perfectly coordinated cyber attack hits the financial systems of several Muslim nations all at the same time. We're talking banks going dark, markets absolutely crashing, total chaos. It's a complex, incredibly fast-moving threat. So what happens next? How does this new alliance respond? Well, the response described is like a perfectly conducted symphony of action. Step 1. A joint cyber shield slams down, blocking the first wave of the attack instantly. At the exact same time, Saudi Arabia, using its deep expertise in financial intelligence, gets to work tracing where the attack is coming from. And as soon as they find the source, a joint cyber ops team from Pakistan and Turkey goes on the offensive to shut it down. See? It's a multi-layered, multinational response, all happening in real time. Now, a key point in the book is that this alliance has to be adaptable. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. For example, let's say a destabilization threat pops up in the Gulf. In that case, a specialized team from Pakistan and the GCC states would be the ones to handle it. But for a completely different kind of threat, say extremist recruitment picking up steam in Southeast Asia, a different group would be activated, maybe a coalition of Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan. It's all about tailoring the response to the specific problem. Okay, so all of these pillars, all of these crisis scenarios, they're all building towards one single ultimate goal. It's the central idea in the book's conclusion. And the objective is to transform the collection of Muslim states from a bunch of individual, kind of vulnerable targets into what the author calls a single, resilient, hard target. So what exactly is a hard target? Well, the way the book defines it, it's a geopolitical entity that is so well integrated, so aware of everything happening around it and inside it, that it becomes almost impossible to attack effectively. It's like turning a series of glass houses into a single impenetrable fortress. It means getting rid of vulnerabilities so completely that things like deception, infiltration, or a surprise attack are basically doomed to fail before they even start. It's about total collective resilience. And to really get a feel for this vision, you have to think about what it's supposed to replace. The author argues that this new reality means no more isolated states just trying to fend for themselves, no more of those dangerous, exploitable gaps in intelligence, and no more of those divided, ineffective responses to threats that affect everyone. All of that, according to the blueprint, would be a thing of the past. And all of this leads to the book's ultimate description of this hard target. It's a really powerful list, and the repetition is definitely intentional. It describes a unified body that cannot be deceived, cannot be infiltrated, cannot be surprised, cannot be manipulated, and maybe most important of all, it cannot be divided. And that brings us right back to where we started, full circle with that powerful quote. You see, in the context of the book, this isn't just some hopeful wish. It's presented as the direct, calculated result of putting this entire blueprint into action. The 4 pillars, the crisis responses, the hard target strategy, it all leads to this one single achievement, a state of complete, unified, strategic awareness. So we'll leave you with this final thought. The blueprint in the nuclear umbrella is, well, it's bold, to say the least. It's a vision for a totally new geopolitical reality. And whether you look at it as a fascinating theoretical exercise or a potential roadmap for the future, it really forces you to ask a pretty huge question. What would the strategic ripple effects really be on the global stage if a new, unified intelligence bloc like this actually